Swaddy Krap, and welcome to another Tower of Babble, where we get to read your comments and, well, respond to your comments as well. Here we go with today's Tower of Babble, looking at 3 different segments that we've had up on our YouTube channel over the past few days. So starting off with some comments about yesterday's Thailand News Today edition. Stephen Tuna said nothing will change even after the vaccine has been distributed. Social distancing, masks and restrictions will continue. Well, I think we have to agree with you on that one. Bruce H said, Jet, what you just heard was 3 out of work and desperate musicians hoping for donations to eat. Well, Bruce was referring to the 3 musicians we featured at the start and the end of Thailand News Today yesterday. In fact, their father was on the other side of the street selling some Thai artefacts and doing a roaring trade actually. Students at the moment in Bangkok are not going to school, so they were, I suppose, just filling up their day and making a bit of pocket money too. They certainly weren't desperate. Ian Dunn says no one will come back if people have to quarantine. Well, Ian's sentiment is shared by a lot of people who think that no one's going to be coming back to Thailand as travellers, business people or tourists whilst the 14-day, 15-day, 16-day quarantine remains. So that's a sentiment shared by a lot of people. Bruce H is back again. He said, so for all you people eager to make vaccination mandatory, if you live in a democracy, then put it to the vote. Put your money where your mouth is. Vote on it. Well, the idea in most democracies is that we vote in representatives to make these important decisions. Vaccination is still a choice. You don't have to get the vaccine, of course, unless you want to do some travelling in the future. And this response from El Sucio Federale. The original plan was to manipulate the virus from bat to man and develop a vaccine in secrecy, leak the virus in a third country like Honduras or near America, let the virus rage across the planet and then pull out the vaccine. The CCP's plan was to take out the resistance in Taiwan and Hong Kong, maybe wipe out the Uyghurs at the same time. China looks like the hero, but the virus leaked in their front yard. Just remember, the virus was not a threat to mankind 12 months ago until the CCP played with it. Well, there's a lot to unpack in that particular post. One person, I think, said it all for everybody. LSD is not doing you any good, please don't take it again. And then, of course, there were some responses to our first Tower of Babble for a long time yesterday. We will be doing this daily from now on, but thanks for the comments about the program. James Bond 69able said, brilliant, this kind of refutation of crazy comments is the freedom to criticise many regimes fear. Don't really think many regimes are fearing the Tower of Babble, but thank you, James. Peter Mason said, why bother jumping through hoops to get the STV, that's the special tourist visa, enter illegally from Myanmar and get a 2-year work visa for free? Peter referring there to the illegal migrants who have been given an amnesty to register, and they do get a 2-year work visa if they're from Myanmar, something that a lot of other foreigners, of course, have to fight a lot harder for. Stephen Hunter said, well said. Another general rule of thumb to consider is not always what is said, but how it's said. A poster that continually attacks other contributors in an overly personal manner is also a menace to the many contributors posting their personal opinion without fear of being mobbed. And finally, some responses to a video we did last week about freedom of speech in this COVID era. Megan Papa 1 asked the question, is there freedom of speech in Thailand? Freedom of speech in Thailand is a big topic and something that's too long to really go through here. As media, we have a broad freedom of speech, and if you go to any media conference, you'll certainly see the Thai journalists going at the politicians and the officials pretty vigorously. There are some no-go topics that we don't touch here, and there are some taboo topics that are not really mentioned very much. But broadly, there is quite a lot of freedom of speech in Thailand, a lot more than people may think, even under basically a military rule. Just Different One said, "The public right to free speech and public safety must be a fine line, but often is very blurry and hard to find the centre. But censorship is a two-edged sword used by those that really wish society's good and tyrants alike." And from Jerry Tilley, already too much power in the hands of the big three tech companies, Google, Facebook and Twitter, and there are signs that they are censoring too much content which they do not agree with, a worrying trend. And this is a trend that everybody is trying to address, not only publishers, but some of the big tech companies that run these social media platforms. Of course, you have the right to opt in or opt out of those social media platforms, and because they're private companies, you've got to play by their rules. Of course, some of these companies never went into the social media game to necessarily have to try and wade their way through the political discourse. But here we are, and even as publishers, we have to find a way through this as well. That's all for today's Tower of Babble, where we look at the stuff you're babbling about in response to our YouTube programs. Thank you for watching, and we will be back again tomorrow.